All righty. Okay, so welcome everybody to the Wednesday webinar for today. Marcy Phelps is going to present for us. I'm super excited about this one because, as you probably know, Marcy is a name in the industry to be reckoned with. I see her everywhere. People are always using and sharing her materials, so I know she's going to have a lot of good stuff to share with us today. Marcy specializes herself in doing due diligence, asset investigations, litigation support, and she also creates online courses on investigative research at Marcy Phelps and Associates, which I believe at the end of this, she'll share a link, or sometime along the way, she'll share a link to that. So in case you want to find her courses, which I've actually taken one of them, they're great materials. So really good resource that's available online. And Marcy has been in business almost 25 years, so that's quite a while. And I know you have a lot of good experience that you're going to share with us today, Marcy, and I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you, Claire. I really appreciate being here today. I'm excited to talk about public records research because it's such a big part of what we do as private investigators. Unfortunately, it's public records. It's probably one of the more challenging types of research. It's not always very straightforward. And in fact, it's a bit of a maze sometimes and hard to find your way. So hopefully I can help today. And here's what we'll cover. First, we'll talk about what a public record is and what it isn't, and where you can find public records, what sources you might be using. We'll talk about some of the challenges of working with public records, and there's quite a few of them. So we'll just cover some of them here today. And then I'm going to talk about strategies and tips for research. So you're not going to have a list of resources. We're going to talk more strategy, different types of public records, and what you can find in them. So let's get started because it's not a lot of time actually for such a big topic. Let's start with the basics, what public records are and where you can find them. Here's a dictionary definition of public records. It's something that's required by law to be made and kept by a government agency or a public officer, and it's filed in a public office. That is my highlight there. The public records are subject to inspection, examination, and copying by any member of the public. My comment on that is it depends, because here is definition of a public record from a particular government agency. I forget what the jurisdiction was in it. But as you can see, they define it the way the dictionary does, but then they say, except and materials that fall under their exemptions. So what this means for investigators is that public records are not always publicly available. I had an instance a couple of weeks ago. I was searching for a lien, trying to get details. I was able, from 2 different county offices, I was able to get the names of the debtors and the creditors, but I was not able to get the amount of the loan. That was private information that jurisdiction had decided. So not always publicly available. There are many types of public records, and I want to mention in many different formats. They can be online, they can be only in hard copy at the government agency that's created them. We're just going to talk about 5 of the different types of public records today, the ones I've highlighted, and we'll go into those in the last section.
Hey, Marcy, I just wanted to check with you. When are you thinking to start screen sharing. You're not screen sharing
You're
yet, are
not
you?
seeing it.
No, not
Oh, it
yet.
says I'm screen
Not-
sharing.
It
Uh,
says you're on screen
I
share?
see it.
I can see it.
I can see it.
Yeah, we
I
can
can see it too. We can see
Am I
it.
the only one who's not seeing the
Yeah,
screen
I can
sharing?
see
That's
it.
interesting. Okay, well, as long as you guys are good, I've actually
Okay.
got the slides here separately so I can look at those. So
Okay.
we'll
Oh,
go ahead then.
okay. You had me
I
nervous.
can't see it, so I'm not sure what I'm doing
All
wrong.
right.
Oh,
You can or can't?
I cannot.
Okay.
Are you using a
So-
Mac?
are
Nope.
you,
Oh,
are
okay,
you
never
using
I,
what?
a Mac.
I don't. Yeah, I'm not.
Oh,
I'm on a Mac and I think I just figured it out either way, to hit the,
Repress that
it's in your
button.
viewing options,
Yeah.
Carrie, if you're the one speaking, and then
Yeah.
there up in the upper right corner, there should be a shared screen with video, and your speaker view also might be affecting it because that's what was going on for me.
Yeah.
okay.
Okay, sorry for the interruption, Marcy.
And I'll be happy to share my slides, or you have them, Claire, so you could share them with whoever needs them. So let's talk about public record sources. There are two different types of sources you're going to be using. You're going to be using the direct sources. Those are the agencies that create the public record. And then you have the database, the aggregators. They're the ones that collect the records from the direct sources and from multiple jurisdictions. So Secretary of State filings from all the states that make them available, and they aggregate them into one database. Now both these types of sources have their pros and cons. The direct source is the official source. The aggregators make mistakes when they collect these sources and throw them into their databases. They drop records, they make indexing errors, so they're impossible to find. But sometimes we don't know what jurisdiction to go to. We don't know where someone owns a business or a property. So we need to go to the aggregators first and then go direct to verify, because the aggregators will cast a wide net for you. Let's talk a little more about each one of these. The direct sources, the government sources, they can be free or fee-based. Just because it's from the government and it's a public record doesn't mean it's free. Texas Secretary of State, for example, you have to have an account and pay. Los Angeles County is mostly fee-based. To find these sources, I just Google it, honestly. But there are some directories that will take you to, that'll show you links to where these direct sources might be. The aggregators, sometimes they specialize by location or types of records. These are some examples of the database vendors that I used for public records: LexisNexis, Westlaw for court records, Dun & Bradstreet is business records. Data Tree is property records, usually, I believe. And then we have another type of aggregator is the private investigator databases that contain public and proprietary information. And that's the TLO, tracers, and others. Here are some considerations you want to look at when you're deciding which type of source. As I said, you have the budget for fee-based sources, while the government, they have fee-based, but they're not that expensive. But a LexisNexis subscription is very expensive. So you have to see what sort of budget you have. does your source provide the full document, or are they just giving you an index of the records? So sometimes you're just looking at a very brief record and not the full document. Do you need the official document or an unofficial document? So a certified copy with a PDF that you download, be okay. So you need to take that into consideration when you're deciding on your sources. Now that we've covered what public records are and what types of sources, let's talk about some of the challenges. There are a lot of myths about online public records, as with any any online source or information. First myth is that it's all online. No, not all public records are online, especially in the smaller jurisdictions. So you have to be prepared sometimes to go right down to the courthouse or the recorder's office, or give them a call and see if they'll send you a PDF, which is what I had to do recently on quite a few of these smaller counties. As I mentioned, it's not all free. A $25 instant background check, you get what you pay for in background checks. So that's not going to be very worthwhile. There is not one best online source. When you're looking at public records, you're going to be looking at multiple sources. Public records are not easy. They are not logical. That's why it helps to understand what they're about and have some strategies. And I'm going to say something about comprehensive reports. Those are the reports you get from the PI databases, and the PI databases are an aggregator since they collect records from multiple sources. But a comprehensive report is actually an aggregation of aggregated sources, if that makes sense. They collect all these records from the different parts of their database, from the different like sub databases, if you will, and put them into one big report. So again, once you aggregate something, there are mistakes. These comprehensive reports can be very useful if you're just starting out and you want to get a broad picture of things and you need leads to states and cities or counties that you need to then search. So they can be valuable, but they're a tool. They are not the end all be all for public records. So they're just a starting point. Another big challenge with public records is that there's a lot of missing information, and for several reasons. First, as I mentioned, I kind of alluded to jurisdictional differences. Every jurisdiction, every state, every county, with even counties within the same state, have different laws and processes. And what's available will be different. So it's up to us as investigators to know what's missing from a particular jurisdiction. You have to understand that LA County doesn't provide a lot of identifying information. Here's an example. So this is for tax assessor records. In LA County, you cannot search their database by name, and the owner name is not in the record, the online record. So you need to go down in person and get the record. They will not provide it online. Here in Hennepin County, Minnesota, there's no name searching of their database, but if you search by property, you will get the taxpayer name and address online. So That's kind of the middle of the road. And then in the other end of the spectrum, this is Jefferson County, Colorado. You can search by name, address, anything, and all the info is online. So 3 different counties, definitely 3 different types of availability. Another big issue another reason for missing information is the lack of personal identifiers. So that's the Social Security number, dates of birth, the full names, addresses that are going to help you distinguish between, is this my subject? So many sources don't have identifiers, and it's getting tougher. California has relatively new privacy laws, and they have taken out identifiers. There's a lot of crossed identifiers. If my husband and I take out a loan together jointly, if you pull my comprehensive report, his Social Security number will be there. So name variations, you have to know all the different ways somebody uses their name. Are they Bill, William, Willie? Misspellings and data entry errors. I was looking for someone, Jane M. Smith, and on a deed record, I was really surprised where they do a lot of due diligence. She was Jane B. Smith. So you have to be, that's just another challenge. And you always need to verify, and you need more than one identifier to make sure you've got a match. And so sometimes it's not as obvious. You may have to dig into the full documents instead of the index, the record index. So it's a bit of a treasure hunt sometimes. There are other reasons for missing information, dropped records. Sometimes they just forget to collect some, or they enter them incorrectly. Lag time is the time between when a public record is created by the agency and when it shows up in a database. So sometimes there's a bit of a lag time. I've noticed that in court records lately. And lots of missing information because of privacy laws and redaction. Here is the state of Arizona has many reasons for redacting personal identifying information. And as a researcher, it frustrates me. But as someone with a lot of law enforcement in my family, I can understand it. So those are some of the challenges of working with public records. Let's talk some strategy now on how to work around these. And I'll talk specifically about corporation filings, real estate records, UCC filings, uniform commercial code, judgments and liens, and court records. First, a general strategy for working with public records, searching online. As I mentioned, you want to use multiple sources. You're just going to find, I use multiple public records databases, aggregators. I use tracers, IDI Core, LexisNexis, and then I go direct to the source, to the county or the state that's creating the records. So as I said, start with the aggregators. If you're looking broadly, if you know Joe Smith owns a company in Colorado or North Carolina, then you can go to those Secretary of State offices and directly. But Usually, I don't know. I don't know about your practice, but I don't usually know where people own businesses. Maybe they're not sharing all the information that we need. So I start with the aggregators. I then dig into those records, look for addresses, locations, any business affiliations, names, look for name variations, any other identifiers that you could pull out. And then I go to the jurisdiction, the Secretary of State, the county recorder's office. Save everything. I made the mistake. I still make it every so often. Oh, I don't need that. And then later on, I do need it. So I save everything and know ahead of time, especially if you're working with attorneys, whether they need certified copies or screenshots or PDFs will do. So let's start with corporation filings. So every business, public and private, needs to file usually with a state agency when they start their business. It registers their name. It protects their name. It also informs the public. So, so business entity records or corporation filings. And you're usually looking at the applications for incorporation or registration, and then there'll be annual reports and reports of any changes. So all these different types of documents will have valuable information. You want to look at active and inactive companies because even if a company is inactive with the Secretary of State's office, it could still be in business. They could still have a bank account. They just might not be up to date in their paperwork. These are usually filed with the state Secretary of State offices. I think Hawaii is different. They have a separate office, but that's the only one I've seen that's different. Availability and cost may vary. They're not always free, as I keep mentioning. And these records are really useful for finding assets. Of course, a business is an asset. Finding out who the actual owner of a business, partners, any other businesses that may be related. This is all valuable information for our investigations. I am going to mention piercing the corporate veil. So if you have a corporation or an LLC, you're supposed to, that gives you some protection for liability, again, personal protection for any liabilities against the company. And it can work the other way. It protects the business against personal indebtedness or liabilities. However, there are many ways, and they call this piercing the corporate veil, that there will be exceptions to those rules. And PIs are often tasked with finding ways to pierce the corporate veil. But we're not always so lucky as to see the records. Are they keeping this company separate from their personal records? That's usually the big giveaway. So it's not really for investigators to decide if it can be pierced. That's decided by the courts. Our job as investigators is to look for the evidence. We need to check the filings, the status, who the officers are, any changes or other information. And the big giveaway, the big reason, the big way you can provide evidence that the corporate veil can be pierced is if they're not up to date on their corporation filings. If they're inactive, if they have not filed their annual reports or any changes that they needed to file. So that's the way investigators can usually help with piercing the corporate veil. We can't really look at the records. We don't always have the financial records to look at. Another type of valuable public records is real estate records. So property, homes, and commercial buildings. Sometimes these are called recorded documents, but real estate is not the only type of recorded documents. So, but real estate records are one type of recorded documents. And when you're looking at these public records, you'll be looking at deeds, tax assessments, sometimes the mortgage record is out there, and deed assignments, sales. And these are located in the jurisdiction where the property is located. Usually in the assessor's office, the county, on the county level, at the assessor's office, the clerk, and the recorder. Coverage is very spotty for online records. And as I showed you earlier, the names aren't always in there. But these records can be very useful for finding assets, ownership history, names, property details. There are maps, recorded documents. Maps are one type of recorded document. So if you're serving process, it's really nice to know what the property is looking like. Is there a back door? Is there a side door? Business connections, trust info. They're really full of information if you can get your hands on these types of records. Uniform Commercial Code filings, UCC filings. These are filed when usually business property is used as loan collateral. So it protects the interest of the lender, the secured party. If they are announcing, hey, this property has already been used as collateral, so you don't do that. It also helps in case of liens. It helps with prioritizing who gets what when the lien is collected. So once this is filed. These are generally recorded at the state level where the business is organized. So if a business is registered and has filings in multiple states, so I can, for example, I'm incorporated in Colorado, but I'm also registered in North Carolina as a foreign company. I have seen companies registered in 10, 20, 15 states. So you need to go to all these different states to see, to pull the UCC filings. The types of documents you'll be looking at is the initial filing, which usually is 10 years, depending on the property that's being used as collateral. Then they can apply for a continuation, and then you have the release and termination. This is, I can't believe I had a recent case where UCC filings came in so handy. We were able to identify assets that we didn't know about, because sometimes in the initial filing, they'll say what the asset is that's being used as collateral. Who their financing institution is, partnerships, related companies. Very often the banks want all the companies that are owned by this individual to be listed on the UCC filing as a debtor. Very useful information. I found out about way more companies than I knew about that were owned by the subject of my investigations. Let's talk about judgments and liens. I think liens especially are the most challenging because they're scattered all over the place. They could be, I can't even give you a general rule of thumb on some of these because they're just scattered. This one county, I had to go to 2 different offices. One gave me one piece of information, another gave me another piece of the information, and then they told me that the amount of the lien was not public information. So it was scattered and incomplete. You always need to verify at the source. I have found the aggregators are a little slow on some of the updates on these. Even when you're looking for assets, you want to look at liabilities. So you want to include judgments and liens in any asset search that you're doing, because someone could have $1 million in assets, but $2 million in judgments and liens against them. So they have a really terrible net worth. These records are valuable for information about financial stability. I use these especially in due diligence. If they can't manage their own money, how are they going to manage my client's $65 million? So in an investment. Information about businesses, again, spouses and partners, and other asset information, because sometimes in a lien, they'll talk about what the property is that's where there's a lien against. Judgments, let's just go into a little more depth here. Judgments, you have 2 different types of judgments. You have financial judgments where you owe people money, and then the family and criminal courts sometimes will issue a judgment, like in the case of a divorce, and there is some alimony involved or support. The judgments are usually filed at the local or county level with the real estate records. And there usually will be an underlying court case involved with the judgment. So that's where you're really going to find the information that you need instead. And we'll go into courts in the next section. But there'll be a judgment record usually on the local or county level, but then you can go to the courts and get additional information. Liens, again, these are really difficult. You have different types of liens. The voluntary lien, that's where you've taken out a mortgage or a loan. A UCC filing is a voluntary lien. So they have your consent to issue this lien. And then we have involuntary liens. Those are the tax liens, mechanics liens. That's if you're haven't paid a service provider, they will issue a mechanics lien. And then the liens issued by the courts. Those are a type of involuntary lien. Let's talk about tax liens. They can be on personal or real property. Federal tax liens are filed on the county level, usually at the Secretary of State offices, under the taxpayer name and address. For state tax liens, it's different if you're a business, if it's a business or individual. Secretary of State with the UCC filings for business tax liens. And for individuals, it's at the county level with the recorder or the clerk. But it could be anywhere. I'm just saying. So we've gone through 4 other types. My brain, I can't think of them right now, but business property records, real property, UCC filings, judgments and liens. Let's talk about court records. And court records are kind of challenging too, along with those liens. And I have an entire course on this one, on court records, where I go into more detail. But there are so many different types of courts that you could be looking at. Federal, state, and county is what we usually look at in investigations, and we want to look at all the different types of law that might be involved. Court records are extremely valuable when you find them for financial information, especially in divorce cases. You'll see a lot of financial stuff. Businesses, that's where I find partnerships, family names, and these records tell you a lot about an individual, their financial stability, because if they have a lot of active court cases or judgments against them, that will show some financial instability. And they also tell you a lot in due diligence. We use them because we want to know, is this somebody who likes to sue their business partners? So you learn a lot about individuals and businesses too, how they conduct themselves. I just want to note that when you're searching court records, you're generally not searching the entire document, maybe a motion or an opinion. You're not searching all the keywords in there. What you're searching is the docket or the docket sheet, which is a running summary of a case or a register of actions, it's sometimes called. And these are all the different types of information that may or may not, they're usually included in a docket sheet. So you can see the parties, the judge, where the case is being filed, dates. I don't think I put that in there. Dates, the status, the case status, and depending on your source and depending on the case, you may or may not be able to link to the full document from the docket sheet. When you're working with court records, you want to look for the official repository, the official place to look. So like for federal courts, you want to go to pacer.gov because that is the official repository. Sometimes it's the courthouse. As I mentioned, you want to look for hidden information, assets, business and family relationships. I have found that the appeals opinions are very valuable. They will often contain a very helpful summary of the case and additional case information. Unfortunately, court records are notoriously lacking in identifiers. So there's no social security number. Sometimes the full name or address is not there. And so you have to dig into the documents if you can, and always verify with multiple sources if this is your individual, your target. I recently had a case where I was sure this was our guy, and once I did a little digging into I went into corporation filings to see if this person really owned this business that was being discussed in the document. Once I did this verification process, I realized it wasn't my target. So with court searching being so, I call it fuzzy, I always use disclaimers in my reports, and I also provide context. I never just send, here's the docket sheet. I explain, I dig into the records and I find out what the complaint was, what the outcome is, if any, if it's active or if it was dismissed with or without prejudice. So I usually do a summary to provide context. Pacer.gov, as I mentioned, is the official repository, the official source for federal criminal, civil, and bankruptcy. Just a note, it does not contain U.S. tax court information. You have to go to the website for U.S. tax court. So that's something that's missing out of this repository. I've also found that Pacer has been missing quite a few cases that I know exist because I got them from the courthouse, but they were not in Pacer. You need to have an account for Pacer. It's not very expensive. You don't start incurring costs until you've reached $30, and a lot of documents are just 10 cents per page. It's not quite intuitive, so make sure that you know how to use Pacer. Also, you want to make sure that you're familiar with what's included and what's not included. So here's a screenshot of the court information page, or the first page of many pages, that will tell you all the different courts and when the earliest cases were and the most recent. And clearly I took this screenshot around September 24th. So they're usually pretty current, not always. But look at the differences in the earliest cases. We have some going back to 1963, 1985. And then the final column is the coverage date. And I had to look that up because, well, what's the difference between the earliest case, the most recent, and the coverage date? So the coverage date is the date from which the court has daily case access available. So for that first Alabama court, prior to let's look at the second one. They say the earliest case is from 1966, but the coverage date is 1994. That means it's spotty before 1994, but it's daily after 1994. State courts, we use these for family law, personal injury, estate planning and probate, criminal law that's stemming from state statutes, traffic courts, although I have found, and I forget where it is, I think it's in Illinois, Wisconsin, traffic violations are county. So it may be state, it may not be. And then this website about state court websites is quite handy. And it will show you the differences between the different state court systems. So this is why court searching is so difficult, because look, in Colorado, it's a little complicated. Vermont's very simple. So every state is different, and you have to figure out which court it is you need to be searching. Some cases you need to look at county and local courts. These are very spotty because the smaller the jurisdiction, the more spotty the coverage will be. But some states are going towards a unified system. So, and that's a good thing. New York has had one for a long time where county and state are in one place. North Carolina, where I currently live and work, when I first started, I mean, I think it was right before I relocated, you needed to either go down to the courthouse or you had to get a subscription to a special state operated database. But now they're moving towards a unified online system that's available to the public. And I believe I read the other day that by 2025, all 100 counties in the state will be in the unified system. Right now, there's about 40. Although I'm going to be honest, with the devastation in the western part of our state, I'm going to say that some of these systems may not be operating, and the timeline for when it will be completely unified will probably change. So I recommend that you pick up the phone. When in doubt, you know, sometimes we online researchers tend to rely on our computers way too much. And I have, once I break that habit every so often, I pick up the phone, I realize how much time I can actually save by talking to a human being at the courthouse or any of these state agencies. You can find the courts you're looking for or the unified system through Google or this source brbpub.com. It's a linked directory, and it will take you to the courts. Here are some sources for criminal records. The sex offender registry, which I'm always checking in due diligence. So in summary, online public records, know the difference between public records and what's publicly available, not the same thing. Understanding what your client needs and why they need it will help you know what sources to go to, what format to download your records in, how much of a summary do they need. Sometimes I have clients that just want the documents. I don't understand it, but that's what they want. They don't even want a summary. I can't say this enough. Use multiple sources, know their limitations, learn how they work. You can't do that on your client's time, so you need to sometimes set aside some time to dig into this and learn. You need to go to the primary source for confirmation and documentation. You can't use an aggregator for that. You always need to verify. We all know this as investigators. So there you have it. Let's connect on LinkedIn if we aren't already. If you have questions that we don't cover today, here's my email. And here's a link to my courses. I have courses on specific types of public records and due diligence and other types, asset research and other types of investigations. So thank you very much. And I'm open to questions at this time.
Awesome. Thank you, Marcy. That was really great. Ton of information. And the links you've shared have been good. I look forward to looking into those myself. Now's the time, guys. If you have questions, you can raise your hand or you can put it in the chat and I'll pass it along to Marcy and she can answer it. Marcy, we just have one so far, I think, from Joseph asking, do you know if the Bureau of Indian Affairs is pay to search or free?
Oh, I haven't been there in so long. I can't tell you what it is now, but at one time it was, I believe it was free. I have only been there a couple of times, so I'm sorry I can't give you an authoritative answer on that.
No, that's all right. I appreciate the well, honestly, really. Um, I guess specifically though about the BIA, working with my tribe because I'm originally from Washington, and we have a missing persons case, and trying to do as much as I can to help my tribe, especially since it is my baby cousin. But because they're a minor, well, it's difficult.
Well, I guess you can just check it out. I'm sorry, I can't help you with that.
All right.
So then we have one more, we have another one from Chris saying, please describe or define the term proprietary as it relates to databases such as TLO. Can you talk to that, Marcy?
Proprietary means that somebody owns it. It's not public information. So TLO records are private. They own it. TLO owns those records, and we have to pay them for it.
Thank you, Marcy. Appreciate it.
I have one, Marcy. I've heard that that there are basically three big sources for the aggregators, and they all pull from some combination of the three big credit reporting sources. Is that right as far as you know, or is there something else? I think I heard like TLO, Experian, and I always Equifax or something, or the ultimate sources for all of the aggregators.
Yeah, basically, well, not all of their information is from the credit reporting agencies. But like when I run a people search, when I'm trying to get a social security number and addresses, those are what's called credit headers. They are pulled from the credit reports. But then they also, when you're looking up business information, I believe they're getting it from the Secretary of State office. So some of the information is from the credit reports, and then some is from some information is from the state, county, or local agencies.
That makes sense. Yeah. Let's see, we've got Andre said, is there training or classes to learn how to use the PI locate databases?
Oh, I would say from those database providers, they would provide the training for that. So when I signed on for tracers and IDI, they offered me training. And I highly recommend you take them up on it. Because sometimes, I'm a former librarian who's been dealing with databases for 30 years. So I'm pretty good at finding my way around, but some of these databases I even have trouble with. So take advantage of the training that the company offers.
Thank you, Marcy. That's great. Seeing a lot of thank yous. Did I miss any questions, guys? If I've missed your question, feel free to resend it, but I don't see any more questions at the moment. Where are we at here for time?
And you do have my email if you want to ask me any questions later. And for those of you, I don't know if there were still some people who couldn't see the slides. I guess, Claire, you told me you'll be posting this to YouTube, so you can see it there.
Yeah, thank you. That's actually a perfect segue to our closeout, unless we see any other questions come through. We will be sharing this presentation, Marcy, on our YouTube channel, which I'm actually going to drop that channel into the chat right now so that people can find it. It's pretty easy to find anyway. It's just the @PIAI114 is our channel name. And then yeah, like Marcy said, you can reach her via her email or her LinkedIn. And I would recommend you all take a look at the trainings she offers because those are great resources. So I think that's it, folks. Thank you so much, Marcy. And everyone. Thank you for joining us, and please do join us again for next Wednesday webinar. It'll be the first Wednesday of next month.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Marcy. And Joseph, real quick before we go, did you get that link?
Yes, I did. Sorry, I couldn't figure out my mute button. Thank you so much, Marcy, and thank you, Matt.
Yeah, no worries. But that's how you do the tribal stuff. I've used it before. But that should answer your questions about the different regional tribal type stuff for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no worries. And thanks again, Marcy. We appreciate you.
Welcome. My pleasure. Have a good one.
And you too.
Thank you.
All right, cool.